Good afternoon, colleagues. It's always a bit crazy presenting after Dr. Nicola and the exciting approach. And she's also from Sandparks. So I hope there's not going to be any bias. I don't have a lot of time, but I'm going to talk to you about sea level risks to the Garden Route National Park, current and future climate perspective. You will see that in this presentation, there's no conclusions or recommendations because this is supposed to be a talk. So I will leave that for us to have a debate on what needs to happen next. Okay. Right. So there's a growing concern with regards to the impact of extreme weather events across, social spectrum. With the past decades, I think having seen an increased number of extreme weather events, and this has been largely driven by the increase in greenhouse gas emissions. In as much as we saw, I think, a slight decline in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions during the COVID-19, we have seen that the amount of greenhouse gas emissions have since increased post the COVID-19 pandemic. And we have also seen a record number of extreme weather events that has also translated into serious losses and damages. If you look at the global scenario, we expect that due to the increase in terms of global carbon emissions, the global temperature is expected to increase. And we know that in many respects, global temperature is the key driver of climate and also climate change. So climate scenarios are largely driven by temperature, which is actually problematic, particularly if you consider the emissions gap where we see an increase in the carbon emissions. And if you look at all the scenarios, and either low carbon emission scenarios, or high carbon emission scenario, there is evidence that global temperature is going to increase. And what is the impact of that increase? An increase in temperature spells disaster, particularly for coastal communities, as that increase in temperature actually manifests itself in increase in sea surface temperature, which results in the expansion of the ocean, but also it translates into an increase in sea level rise. As a consequence, you can see there on the map that is on the right. So you can see all that red, which shows an increase in terms of temperature in our oceans, and this is one of the key drivers of sea level rise. We have seen a devastating tropical cyclone in the past week, which is still active in the Atlantic Ocean. But what we also see is that if you look at the sea surface temperature, you can see that the temperature anomalies and what is expected in terms of future scenarios in terms of temperature, some areas have actually exceeded what is projected to be in 2021. And we know that this is going to have a significant impact on our weather system, particularly we are expecting that an increase in sea surface temperature will unleash more intense tropical cyclones. And these tropical cyclones and also other cut-off flows like that, those that we have witnessed in particularly this year, results in an increase in tidal activity, particularly in the ocean, which actually worsens the already trouble that we have with ocean levels rising. So an increase in greenhouse gas emissions as we continue on a almost business as usual, and proxy global temperatures and will worsen the fortunes of coastal communities. And the Garden Route is part of that coastal community and is not going to be spared. So what are the knowledge gaps? What is the state of science and knowledge with regards to sea level rise? We see that there is very little that has been done globally in terms of the studies, and also if you look at the countries that have been studied, which have got a lot of research, you can see that there are still a lot of countries, and of course there is some information. You can see South Africa there, where quite a few studies have been conducted. It also reflects that we have got still a lot of knowledge gaps in these regards, which needs to be addressed. What are some of the key concerns when it comes to climate change and sea level rise? You can see that there are many issues that are coming into the fore with regards to the debate, and these ranges from coastal adaptation, the impact of climate change, adaptation measures, the climate change effect, and how coastal communities can become resilient. This study seeks to examine the current and future impacts of sea level rise on the Garden Route National Park. And the study is going to utilize the data that has actually been provided by Work Group 1, which was a contribution to the 6th assessment report, which is the current report that we are using. And all the anomalies that you're going to see, you've got their baseline is the period 2080, is for the period 1995 to 2014. So you've got different scenarios with SP 1.19, which was an warming to approximately 1.5 above 1850 to 1900 in 2100, after a slight overshoot. So when we look at the current emissions rate and we try to project that, we can come up with scenarios. And some of the scenarios says we are going to stay within 1.5 degrees Celsius, and other scenarios are saying 2 degrees Celsius, others are saying 3 degrees Celsius. As you know, in South Africa, in some months, if you look at the temperature anomalies for this year alone, coupled with El Nino, they've already surpassed the 3 degrees Celsius threshold. So the first thing was to try and look at permanent sea level markers data, which actually shows you the rate at which the ocean is actually rising. So I used the 3 stations. The first one is for Port Elizabeth. And if you look at by 2030, Port Elizabeth will have an increase of 0.1 meters, which is actually about 10 centimeters. And almost the three scenarios that are projected with high confidence. But you can see that at least by 2100, some estimates actually shows that there is going to be a 1 meter increase. So what is the niceness scenario with regards to this? If you look at niceness, I took up for the period 2030, and you can see that niceness is actually much higher with 0.12. So it means that if you compare Port Elizabeth and Nicenar, which is just outside there, we have got 0.12 meters by 2030, and we expect that by 2100 or by 2080, other areas would have surpassed the 1.1 meter mark. I also looked at Mossel Bay because it's actually not very far from here, particularly in terms of the data that is available. And Mossel Bay it is at 0.1 at almost all the scenarios with high confidence. So what are some of the expected impacts? What we have seen is that if you couple sea level rise and extreme weather events, be it from tropical cyclones and cut-off flows that are expected to be on the increase in climate change and tidal activities, so one of the biggest tidal activity that we have had was about 1 meter. Okay, I say I'm left with 2 minutes. So you couple that with anticipated sea level rise, there is going to be an increase in terms of losses and damage that is going to be expected in terms of properties that are on the coastline. That includes also the beaches that are enjoyed by our tourists. But what are some of the impacts, particularly for the these 3 sections of Garden Route National Park, these are communities that are also in urban areas. We expect that because of sea level rise and disturbances to estuaries, there's going to be increased conflict between community and sandparks, which might result in legal challenges. But also, this is going to have challenges with regards to marine life. We have observed, I think particularly last year, where we saw, I think, a high tide impact in September, losses particularly in Tsitsikamma, but also in Plettenberg and also other areas that are within the Garden Route. That image there, a dark cloud, so these particular kind of activities that you have seen in September are going to expected to be on the increase. And losses and damage are equally expected to be on the increase. You can see the park manager there looking at the damaged restaurant, like he has lost some very precious chicken eggs. Thank you.